Elect Jeff Landry is expected to face a favorable landscape when he takes office.
Serena Wilson explains.
But we got a lot to do, okay?
Republican Jeff Landry won Louisiana's governor's race without needing to face a runoff, so he has to focus on transition matters sooner than later.
The people of this state are going to expect more out of our government from here on out.
In January, he'll be sworn in as the state is flush with cash, unlike the $2 billion deficits Governor John Bell Edwards inherited.
We expect that he's going to have a honeymoon period. He's got a lot of money to deal with, and so he's going to basically have a free hand, we expect, at least for his first term or two.
Republicans already control the legislature, and after Saturday's election, Dillard political analyst Dr. Robert Collins says
this is the first time since Reconstruction that we've had a Republican governor and supermajority Republican majorities in both houses of the legislature.
There's an insurance crisis to deal with, and Collins says, like with most elected officials, honeymoon periods end.
Now, it's not going to last forever because, as we know, there are factions within the Republican Party, within the Republican caucus. And so eventually the more moderate members of the Republican caucus will have their ideas, the more conservative members will have their ideas, and there will be some infighting. And so I don't expect him to have a perfectly smooth 4 years where he just waves a magic wand.
Of course, during the campaign and in TV spots, Landry talked a lot about crime and being tough on crime.
He made crime fighting the centerpiece of his campaign. Now, of course, the challenge is the governor has very limited control over crime fighting. In the state of Louisiana, according to the Constitution and according to the statute, the crime fighting powers are mainly at the local level. Even if you doubled or tripled the size of the state police, you really wouldn't have enough state police officers to adequately implement aggressive crime fighting procedures in all the cities in the state.
And Collins added that Landry can work to change state laws related to criminals.
I'm sure the governor is going to work with the state legislature to probably toughen some of the criminal statutes on the books.
As for Democrats in the legislature,
they are going to cut whatever deals they can cut. They're going to negotiate whatever they can negotiate to try and get some committee chairmanships and to try and get some leadership positions. And then they will move as a block behind the Republican candidate they feel is most favorable to them.
I'm Sabrina Wilson, Fox 8 Local First.